Alright everyone, we're back at it again, and I'm Ronan. Welcome back to the channel. We got a lot of things to cover today, but before we get into that, we got to shout out the patron as we normally do. So Justin Ray, thank you very much for the support. And also everyone, analytics are very important, so please take a look at the stat bar right here and drop a like and a comment to help fuel the video and help it get to a larger audience via the algorithm. And also, if this is your first time here, please subscribe and turn on notifications so that way you'll never miss another upload from the channel. But with all that being said, let's get into what if Brock took the gym challenge part 16. I hope you enjoy. We begin today's part with Brock and Joe as they are heading down the ocean part of Route 9. They're heading to a town called Spikemith, as it is the site of the next gym badge. Joe and Brock are training, as Brock is feeling pretty good since his win in Chichester. It's here that we find our duo in the midst of a battle, and the Pokemon of choice are the ones known as Joltik and Dreadnought. The two have been going at it non-stop for over an hour now, as Brock and Joe are trying to do their best to bring out their full potential. Joe, for a simple fact, is because he wants to try and get Dreadnought to the point to where it can Gigantamax like Nessa's was back at the Mulberry Gym, while Brock has decided to use Joltik as it's been one of the two Pokemon that he hasn't really had a whole lot of time to do anything with as of late. It's just been non-stop, and the Pokemon that's been getting his attention the most are Thwackey, Colossal, and Gyarados. So since they had such a long walk, the boy decided to use this time to train up with Joltik in particular. And this is where we see when the two are exchanging blows, as Dreadnought and Joltik are doing their best to push each other back. However, the electric bug finds itself being overwhelmed by Dreadnought repeatedly, as it is much larger in stature, and it's becoming frustrating for Joltik. However, Brock's encouragement keeps it going, as during their training it has learned a new move. Something that's a lot more powerful than the standard Thundershock, as it's been able to use the move Discharge, which we get to see here on full display. However, there is one thing that Joltik hasn't learned yet, and that's quite how to control the current of the move, as when Brock calls for the move after being pushed back by a crunch, Joltik lets out all of the electricity that it has stored in its body. And unfortunately, this strikes not only Dreadnought, but everything in the surrounding area across the beach, which has a side effect which Brock and Joe wasn't foreseeing, as just before this battle, the two were talking about all of the random occurrences of Dynamax Pokemon that have been popping up, and it has Joe a little bit worried. But Brock had told the boy not to be too concerned about it, as it was centralized in the wild area, and all of the surrounding gym leaders, along with Peony, had been reported to be in the area taking care of all the Dynamax Pokemon. And with them so far away, they weren't in any real danger. However, that's going to be proven to be false at this current time. As the electricity spikes rapidly across the beach, it strikes a certain point that causes a brief explosion. At first, this just looks like the electricity finally grounding, causing a brief poof in sand. But unfortunately, that's not quite the case, as a pink glowing can be seen from deep under the beach. This is where it hits the two boys, as Dreadnought was standing right by this when it happened. It's a power spot, and unfortunately, because it's one that hasn't been tapped into by man, it is one that is able to oversaturate Dreadnought, causing it to Dynamax immediately, even though Joe is not in the possession of a Dynamax band. And this immediately causes Dreadnought to freak out, as it's so oversaturated with energy that it's unable to focus on anything that's happening. It's at this point that Brock doesn't have any choice, and he's gonna have to engage with it, as Joe is frozen out of fear. So he decides to send in Thwackey to offer assistance to Joltik, figuring that they both have some sort of type advantage against it, so they might be able to do something. But unfortunately, with Dreadnought's oversaturation of energy, it's going to be difficult for them to do anything, and things don't really go too well. As Dreadnought rampages, the two Mons are slammed about every time they make an attempt to get close. This whole instance causes two things. One, Thwackey's temper reaches its boiling point, as it begins to start attacking, just completely ignoring the commands of Brock, while on the other side, Joltik took a decent amount of damage and is trying to recover from being nearly squished by one of Dreadnought's massive feet. As Brock begins to check on the bug, he looks it over, holding it, making sure that there's no real damage to it. However, this is a moot point, as the two are forced to dodge because Dreadnought is rampaging even harder now due to Thwackey's insistent attacking of it. And this is putting Brock directly in the line of danger, which is something that Joltik is going to do its best to try and prevent. However, it's just not strong enough, but its will and determination to protect its trainer causes Joltik to begin glowing in an evolutionary light, as before Brock's eyes, it takes on its second stage evolution in Galvantula, as as it fires an electro web, trying to do its best to subdue Dreadnought from any type of movement. But unfortunately, even with this increase in power, this still isn't enough, and Thwacky is even having trouble keeping up. It gets to the point to where Brock reaches back to his belt, getting ready to pull out the Pokeball for Gyarados. However, just as Galvantula uses a Giga Drain while Thwacky uses a Razor Leaf, some assistance is going to come from a very unlikely place as a Pokemon makes its presence known as it attacks Dreadnought with one massive chop to its throat before it drops as it reduces in size, returning to its normal state. Everyone looks at this random Pokemon that decided to help them out of the goodness of their heart, they think, for the time being. However, this thing is a bit intimidating as it flashes its tongue at them, which could be taken as a sign of aggression. However, a voice echoes from behind them as it says, "Obstagoon, that's enough." Turning, the two boys see a man in a white uniform with long black hair with a white streak walking towards them. The guy asks if they are okay, to which both Brock and Joe confirm by shaking their head. The man then thanks his Obstagoon as he returns it to a ball and introduces himself as Pierce before his Rotom phone rings, hovering in front of him, projecting a hologram of somebody they know all too well. Chairman Rose, Pierce says, "We have found the power spot, and unfortunately there was a Dynamax incident, but me and Obstagoon were able to quickly subdue it." "Very good," Rose says. "Now cordon off the area to prevent any other harm from coming to anybody, and be on the lookout. This is the third sighting we've had in that part of Galar in the last week, which is highly unusual due to your location." Pierce nods as he then hangs up before turning back to the boys, apologizing for ignoring them temporarily. He then tells them that it's extremely dangerous to be out here all alone, especially when they seem to be on the receiving end of this boy's Dreadnought. However, Joe tells them that they're actually on their way to Spikemouth. They were looking to challenge the gym there. That's why they were out here. They were doing some last-minute training before they entered the city, which would have been later on today. This is where Pierce perks up. "Oh, well, it looks like you guys found exactly what you're looking for. I'm actually the gym leader of Spikemouth, but unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to take any challenges as of right now." This immediately causes Brock to sigh as he asks why, to which Pierce tells him why don't they head into town. He'll tell them everything along the way. As the three of them walk, Pierce explains that in this area of Galar, it's very unusual to see a Dynamax Pokemon. There actually isn't any power spots in this part of Galar, so for there to be any type of Dynamaxing happening is a highly unusual event. And because it's been happening so frequently, I've been forced to step in to try and protect travelers on the road, and it's really been cutting into my music time. This is where both Brock and Joe thanks Pierce for helping them out, as if he wouldn't have been out here, then they may have gotten squished by their own teammate, to which Pierce says not to worry about it. Even though he doesn't like doing it, it's something that he's going to make sure he gets done. After all, it's a duty of him as a gym leader for Galar. The trio continue on walking and talking for what seems to be like an hour or two, until they finally find themselves inside the town of Spikemouth. Pierce comments to Brock and Joe that if they wish to challenge him, they can do so in the morning. However, his Pokemon have been battling all day, so it's best that him and them get some rest, while they head to the Pokemon Center and get all of their Pokemon looked up, especially Dreadnought. After that throat chop it took from Obstagoon, it looked like it could use a doctor to look at it. Our two heroes nod as they part ways with Pierce. However, as they get to the Pokemon Center, Joe comments that this whole town doesn't really look like the cleanest place. Brock tells him not to worry, it's probably not a usual thing. However, as Joe reaches out for the door, the trash can right next to the door begins to rattle as something pops out of it. It's a very disheveled Pokemon, and it looks like it's eating the garbage. This causes Joe to be grossed out a little bit as he tells Brock that they need to hurry inside before he loses whatever food that he has in his system. However, Brock just laughs at the whole incident as they head inside. However, they're not going to be heading alone as the very crazy looking feline has followed them in. And the first thing that Brock and Joe do is drop off their Pokemon with Nurse Joy so that way they can get them looked at. But after that, they decide to head to the cafeteria so they can get something to eat. But unfortunately for them, they're not going to be alone. As the two sit down at a table, Joe looks over to see a pair of eyes peering over the edge, looking at all of their food. "Disgusting," Joe says. "It's drooling." However, Brock just says it's probably hungry. I mean, after eating garbage, it's gotta be. It's here that the boy asks if the hobo cat would like some food, to which it nods and immediately scarfs down what it's being offered without even chewing. Brock says it must have been a while since it last ate a good meal, so not to worry. They'll make sure they get plenty of food for it, so that way it can eat as much as possible. This causes the feline to get excited, as it eats like a caveman, just grabbing anything off of the two boys' plates and stuffing its face until it gets to the point to where it can't even really move. As the Pokemon lays there on its seat with its belly protruding out, now twice the size of that it was when they came in, Brock pulls out his Pokédex to learn that this Pokemon is something called a Berserker. It looks like it's an evolution to a Galarian Meowth. He finds this fascinating, as he didn't know that Meowth actually had any regional variants. However, since now it seems to be content with all the food that he eats, Brock figures that they need to get it looked at. After all, it probably might need some shots from hanging out with the trash cans all day. So as the two get the call to pick up their Pokeballs, Joe reluctantly helps Brock over to the main counter, as he shows Nurse Joy the Berserker. But the nurse isn't unfamiliar with this Pokemon, explaining that it's been here a while. It was abandoned by its trainer when he could no longer afford to feed it. As the cat wasn't winning any battles, they were never able to get any money. So ever since then, it just hangs out around the Pokemon Center, eating out of all the trash cans. This backstory gets Brock and Joe a little sad now that they know about the whole thing. It's at this point that Brock decides that he would like to try to add it to his roster, as the Scratch Cat doesn't really have anything or anyone to rely on, and he thinks that it's unfair for it to be treated like that. Pulling out a ball, the cat is oblivious to this as it just walks off now that it's been fed. Nurse Joy tells him that's the other thing. It doesn't seem to care about humans unless they have food, as the three of them watch it go over to another couple sitting at a table and pull off the same thing that it just did to Brock and Joe. This angers Joe a little bit, as he's convinced that this was just a scam for it to get fed. However, Brock isn't so sure, as they head to their room for the night. The next day, the two are eating, and Berserker joins them again. Joe tells it to get lost, as they won't fall for its tricks, but Brock says they don't have to be so rude. Let it eat, as we're almost done, and we're not going to finish all this that's on our plates. Reluctantly, Joe sighs with an okay. Luckily, it's not long for the boy, as they quickly finish their eating and get up from the table before Brock tells Berserker that they'll see it later, as they have a gym battle to go compete in. However, as they walk away, Joe just watches in disgust as Berserker just eats away at all the table scraps, and he shudders as they leave the bottomless pit behind. About 30 minutes later, our heroes find themselves at the gym. As they enter, they run into Pierce, who has been waiting eagerly for them for the last hour or so. The gym leader asks which one of them is going to be up to battle first. However, Brock says it's actually only going to be him. Joe is just his traveling friend. He doesn't actually take part in gym battles, to which causes some relief for Pierce, as he informs Brock that they're only going to have a 2-on-2, as he's already had to deal with a Dynamax rampage this morning, and some of his Pokemon have already been put through the ringer. Brock tells Pierce that he doesn't have a problem with this, and asks where they're going to battle, to which Pierce just laughs. Right here. But both Brock and Joe are confused, as they ask what happens when it comes time to Dynamax their Pokemon during the battle. The leader laughs again, as they weren't really paying attention, and goes on to explain that they can't Dynamax in this gym, as it wasn't built on a power spot. Pierce is the only gym leader in Galar that actively does not use the Dynamax phenomenon to increase the power of his Pokemon. So their battle will be straightforward, a simple 2-on-2 with no tricks but the wit and the guts of the trainer and Pokemon. Brock likes this, as he feels like he hasn't had a normal Pokemon battle with high stakes in a while, so he gladly accepts this challenge as the two take their positions opposite sides of the gym of one another. With their Pokeballs in their hand, the two are given the commands to send in their first choices. For Pierce, it's a Pokemon that Brock has never seen before, as he declares, "Scrafty, go!" What pops from the ball is a Pokemon that looks like it has pants that are way too big for it. However, it seems to have trouble moving around, so Brock decides that he might be able to take advantage of this by using something that has a little bit of speed, to which he's going to waste no time in declaring, "Thwacky, your time to battle!" The mid-stage starter emerges from its ball with its two sticks, staring down Scrafty, still a little frustrated from the previous day in the battle with Dreadnought, so it's going to aim to take out its frustration on this Pokemon that has been sent into battle. With the command given to start, Pierce wastes no time in calling for a fake out, to which Brock immediately tries to counter with a double hit. However, as Scrafty closes in, it steps back and claps its hand, causing Thwacky to flinch in place, stunning it briefly. Brock takes note of this, as he's never seen anything like that before. However, while this move isn't particularly powerful, it does have one thing in creating an opening, which is exactly what Pierce wanted, as he sends Scrafty in with another move that Brock is a little bit more familiar with, as his father uses it back at his gym, a move called Brick Break. With the grass type stunned in place, Scrafty is able to easily bring down its fist on top of its head, knocking some sense into Thwacky as it's sent tumbling back from the hit. Well, I gotta say, we're off to a really rocky start on your part, Brock. I hope that your Thwacky is going to be able to go the distance. However, Brock tells Pierce not to be so cocky as he looks to Thwacky. The grass starter stands up as it is seen red. The frustration it has from being tricked like that is inexcusable, and it begins to attack in a blind rage, ignoring any commands that Brock gives it as it brings down a razor leaf followed by a branch poke and then finally a double hit, all on top of Scrafty. The only thing Brock can do is recall the monkey before it gets itself disqualified. However, while its rampage was a bit powerful and embarrassing on Brock's part, it wasn't enough to take out Scrafty as it's still standing, wondering what just happened. However, it's obvious that it's feeling the pummeling it just took. Pierce commends Brock on his ability to know when his Pokemon are out of control, and the fact that he was willing to recall it at that stage shows that Brock cares deeply for his Pokemon, and he doesn't want to see them get hurt or cause harm to others. Brock shyly apologizes for Thwacky's outburst, but he promises that he'll make sure it stays in control for the rest of the battle. So he wants to give it a little cooldown time as he holds his next ball in his hand. The boy is feeling a bout of good luck as he declares, "Galvantula, your time to battle." Brock's newest evolved Mon pops from its ball as it takes to the field, sparking a little bit, signifying that it wants to test out its new power. "Oh, so you're going electric today, are we? With a little bit of bug flare. Well, let's see just how your bug does against Scrafty." As the battle begins, Pierce calls for a sand attack in an attempt to bring down any type of attack that Brock may bring against it. However, Galvantula actually has the perfect counter to this, as Electro Web is able to nab up all the sand rather quickly, giving Galvantula the same kind of opening that Scrafty had created for itself in the beginning of the battle, allowing the bug to fire off a discharge. Now, while Scrafty isn't exactly close to the bug, and at the command of its trainer it begins to jump around the battlefield in an attempt to dodge, discharge is wild, as Galvantula still hasn't learned to control it yet, and the electricity sparks throughout the surrounding area, eventually catching up with its target, knocking it out in the process. Recalling his Dark Fighter, Pierce comments that it seems like Thwacky's not the only one that can't control itself. Brock then apologizes. His Galvantula just learned this attack the other day, and they're still trying to get the hang of it, to which Galvantula lets out a brief cry of its name, signifying that it apologizes for the overusage of the electricity. It didn't mean to. Pierce can see that Galvantula is sorry, unlike Thwacky, so he lets this go as he readies his final Pokeball for this battle, telling Brock he hopes he's ready to face his strongest, as he declares, "Obstagoon, go!" Like a demon out of the hell, the Pokemon emerges from its ball with its tongue exposed, ready to engage in battle as it wobbles its head and tongue back and forth in some sort of aggression and intimidation tactic. Brock decides that Galvantula may be a little bit too meek to take this on just at this point, so he recalls it for the time being. He then readies Thwacky's Pokeball as he hopes that, even though it hasn't been that long, it's had enough time to cool down, as he declares, "Thwacky, your time to battle." Unfortunately, as the grass monkey pops from its ball, its rage has yet to subside, and as the battle is called to start, it immediately takes off down the battlefield, heading straight for Obstagoon. Brock immediately sees this and decides that he may need to recall it before it gets out of hand. However, Pierce welcomes this, telling his Obstagoon to use Obstruct. As Brock recalls his Mon, the ball fails as the Obstruct connects. Pierce tells Brock that there's no way Thwacky's getting out of this battle this time. It's going to have to face the consequences of its actions, as Thwacky tries to land a double hit on Obstagoon. This is easily batted away with a throat chop. The Dark type charges up both of its forearms as it slams them into the neck of Thwacky before driving it into the battlefield. Nothing but a cloud of dust can be seen momentarily, as Brock wonders if it was able to survive. But unfortunately for the Grass type, because it wasn't able to put up a defense due to its blind rage, that move was completely unguarded, and Obstagoon was able to take the win, as it stands up, leaving Thwacky cratered with spirals in its eyes in the middle of the battlefield. Brock recalls his grass starter, telling it, "Thanks for the attempt, but we're gonna have to work on your ability to control that rage of yours." Pierce smiles, telling Brock that he quite enjoyed that exchange. He hopes that Galvantula is able to put up a bit of a better fight, to which Brock tells him that don't worry, they have a foolproof plan that's going to be able to bring them the win, as he declares, "Galvantula, your time to battle." The electric arachnid pops once again from its ball, ready to take on the challenge. As the signals of start are given, Pierce immediately calls for another throat chop. However, Brock has an idea that he thinks is going to work here, as he tells Galvantula to use an Electro Whip, but he doesn't want to use it directly on Obstagoon, rather the surrounding area. The spider does as it's told, shooting the attack in the surrounding area, creating what looks to be like a field of landmines of electrowebs. However, Pierce thinks this is going to be a quick fix, as he tells his dark type just to jump over them and gain some serious air, so that way their throat chop is going to have that much more power when it's brought down on the bug. But unfortunately, Brock was actually hoping for this, as he saw what it did with the Wacky, so he aims to use the Electroweb as a guidance for their next attack, as he tells Galvantula to use a discharge, and to not hold anything back. The bug does what it's told, as it lets loose all of the electricity that it has stored up within inside of its body, and the Electroweb acts just like a conductor, guiding the electricity across the battlefield, allowing it to find Obstagoon smoother than it had before when it had zapped Scrafty. This allows for a cleaner hit, and because the hit was that much cleaner, this is going to have a negative effect on Obstagoon, as a paralysis has set in due to it dropping midair and landing on one of the webs. This catches Pierce off guard. "Are you alright, Obstagoon?" To which the dark type stands up with its tongue still hanging out of its mouth, breathing heavily, as it tries to maintain its position on its feet. "Well, it looks like you got us in quite the binding, don't you, Brock? If we continue this battle, then things are only going to get more difficult. And like I said before, my Pokemon have already had to battle today. So, you know what? I think we're going to call this one. Obstagoon did its best, and unfortunately with the paralysis setting in, I don't want to push it any farther than it has to be, especially with all these Dynamax Pokemon that have been popping up lately. I need it to be in tip-top shape, so that way it can take them down. So, I'm going to fold as the gym leader. You've won this battle." This catches Brock off guard. You never expect Gym Leader and Galar to give up like that. However, he can understand why with all the threats that they've been facing down lately. Walking to the center of the gym, Pierce tells his dark type that it did a great job, but he didn't want to push it any harder. He knows that it could have gone the distance if he really wanted it to, but they have to think about the bigger picture, especially with everything that's going on. So it's best if it just gets some rest, as he recalls it. The gym leader then turns to Brock as he recalls his spider, telling Brock that he's demonstrated an ability that he hasn't seen in a long time, and it's compassion for other Pokemon. Not just yours, but other trainers as well, which is something that's rare, especially when you get in a competitive environment. And so, since you reciprocated that to my Pokemon, I've reciprocated it to you, as I present you with your prize, the Dark Badge. Brock takes the badge, thanking Pierce for the battle that they had, and he wishes that they will have the chance to battle a full 6-on-6 maybe sometime in the future. To which Pierce turns to the boy and tells him, "Oh, don't worry, we'll have that chance when we get to the championship tournament," leaving both Brock and Joe in a stunned silence, contemplating what he means by that. And now we're going to shift our position over to a girl that we haven't seen in a while, Giselle, and there's a very important reason of why we haven't seen her, as we find her in the midst of wrapping up a gym battle with the 4th gym leader of the region, Alistair. He mentions that she's a very angry girl, and she shouldn't be so mean to her Pokemon. Giselle mentions that she's not angry, she's just motivated to get some payback, and this is where we're going to leave things for now. So tell me, how did you guys feel about this part? What did you think about the Dynamaxing that's been happening all over the region and how it's causing more trouble than everybody seems to know? How did you feel about the gym battle that Brock and Pierce had? Do you feel like even though Pierce ended up forfeiting, he still gave Brock a decent battle as a gym leader? And let's not forget about that Berserker who just seems to want to eat everything in sight. Have we seen the last of it? And how about Giselle? Is she taking the gym challenge as well? And if so, who sponsored her? And what's her reason behind it? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments down below. And that's all we had for today's video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to watch all the way to the end, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. If you guys really enjoy my content, consider following me on some of my other platforms like Discord, where you can get to know other people who are interested in what ifs, or on Twitter, where I post sometimes behind the scenes updates. Or if you want to help the channel grow a little bit extra, why don't you consider donating like the people right here have, as whatever you could offer could help us get to a larger audience by helping us get new videos done, or some of the projects that we were custom art is getting kind of expensive. So we want to make sure that we have the funds to do that. But with all that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed everything, and I will see you in the next video.